Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a rant for you that was inspired by this little guy right here. This is the Olight O-Pen number 2. Now, look, in some ways, the thing, it is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a rechargeable flashlight, and you can light it up, and it'll even change brightness and whatnot. You can recharge it using USB-C, and at the bottom of it, it's a pen. Right? At some level, this seems like a really great idea. It feels like, oh, wow, great, it's a multitasker. We love multitaskers. But what I kind of want to ask today is, do we? And more specifically, under what circumstances do we love multitaskers? Now, look, there is a great role for multitasking tools in our lives, and I have many of them, right? Like, this is a perfect example. This is perhaps a ridiculous example. This is the Victorinox Swiss Champ. Or perhaps a more mainstream one would be this guy. This is the Leatherman Wave multi-tool here. Or even like this little guy is one of those sort of single-piece multi-tools. This is the Rat Bastard Zarby Tools Enigma pocket probe that combines like tweezers along with a small bit driver, along with a pry bar, along with a cap lifter. A lot of these things are multitaskers, right? And what I mean by that is that they're able to accomplish many jobs. This Leatherman is a perfectly serviceable pair of pliers, but it also happens to have a reasonable knife. It has a file on there, etc. He says opening the saw. It also happens to have a saw. But anyways, the Leatherman Wave here can do a bunch of different things, and by carrying this, you end up with the ability to do a bunch more things than you would have had if you just carried a pair of pliers, or if you just carried a pocket knife, or just carried a small saw, right? That gives you a lot more options. Same thing here. You know, with your Victorinox Swiss Champ, hey, look, you got a ruler. You've got a small pair of pliers. You've got all kinds of things. A little pair of scissors, a magnifying glass, for that matter. This is giving you a bunch of options of things that you might not have had at all, but if you carry this, you get all of those roughly for free. There is a joy, absolutely 100%, in multitasking. Frankly, there are other kinds of multitaskers that are unexpected but are excellent. Like, this is the Olight Marauder 2, actually. I got this pen free when I bought this light. In addition to putting out a completely ridiculous amount of light when you get the damn thing turned on, this is like light the room and then some. 14,000 lumens! It is also a USB power bank. That's a multitasking that I didn't expect but kind of love. The thing is, though, so multitasking can be great. It can combine multiple tools down into one. It can mean that you're carrying just one thing where you might have needed 4 before. But the thing is, you're always paying a price, right? You're always paying a little bit of a price. If I, for instance, the Victorinox Swiss Champ here is a nice example of this. If I just carry this, yes, I do have a knife. But unfortunately, not only is it a steel that's okay, but it's in a very weird, very large form factor, right? Not only do I do have a Phillips driver, but it's only one particular size, and it's, again, on a little bit of an awkward thing. This has a pen to it. I believe, no, there's the tweezers. It has a pen. But is this really the pen you want to be using all day? No. In practice, multi-tools tend to be, they're better than not having any of those tools handy, but they don't tend to be as good as dedicated tools for the task. That's a sacrifice I'm perfectly willing to make. With like a Leatherman or something, are these the best pliers I own? No, but they're probably the pliers I'll have with me, and so that's a big advantage, right? When you, though, start doing these kinds of more boutique-y multi-tool things, where it is just 2 things, this is just a pen and just a light. It can light things up, and it can write. Those are the exact 2 things. The problem is you end up in exactly the same position of this isn't as good as either of the other options, right? Is carrying a standalone light and carrying an actual pen. And the reason I say that is a couple of things. A, to start with, in this particular, and I'm going to be beating up on this light, but the thing is, every time somebody shows me one of these light pen combinations, I feel exactly the same way. This light it's bright enough. It's actually brighter than I kind of expected, right? And it will definitely illuminate the area under a desk. If you're trying to get underneath your computer or underneath your desk to get the cables in the back of your computer, you know what? This'll do the job. And certainly, this writes, right? It has a serviceable tip. It will write. And in fact, the cartridge it's using is this weird little gel ink rollerball thing. You know what? It's a fine little cartridge. It will write acceptably. There's not a major problem there. But in practice, if we compare this to 2 unitaskers, we end up in a very, very different space. So, for instance, we could compare it on the flashlight front to, for instance, this little guy. It's the Nitecore Tip SE. This is a very small flashlight, but it is a very bright flashlight. It's got a little bit more spot to it. It's got a little bit more power to it. Generally speaking, it's just as rechargeable, and frankly, it's not so much different in size. I mean, yeah, it is a different size, I'll give you, but it's not like you are carrying markedly more gear when you have this guy in your pocket relative to this. And so this ends up, if you said, Nick, you have a choice. You're going to be dealing with flashlighty issues, namely darkness. You get to choose either this or this. I am choosing this every day of the week, and similarly, I would choose a little pen light or something like that. This is another great option here. If you're trying to do, things in the dark, a little pen light can be exactly what you need in many circumstances. And again, similar form factor, just better flashlight, etc. And then on the pen front, the biggest downside to these kinds of tools very often is that the pen part suffers. Not because this is necessarily a bad refill, but because it's a weird refill. Now, I'm sure that some pen person is going to point out, oh my God, Nick, no, that's the blah 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 S12 1848-3. And if you buy them from, this pen store, you can actually get more of them. That's great. But if you compare that to, for instance, I don't know, good old-fashioned Parker Jotter, right? This is a perfectly serviceable pen as well. It's frankly pretty inexpensive. And you know what? You can get these kinds of refills anywhere. Right? Well, maybe not anywhere. It's but damn near anywhere is going to carry Parker refills. If they carry pen refills, they will have that, right? Or if you get something that carries, that uses a Pilot G2 refill, right? Again, this is something that you can get at pretty much any store that has pens will have Pilot G2 refills. As opposed to this, where your chances are you're going to be going online. Maybe you talk to Olight because they're making, or maybe there's another place to get the same refill size, etc. But it's just not the same thing. And so as a result, even if this writes pretty acceptably in terms of daily function, in terms of crap, my pen is out, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to have another refill for this guy, and that's just not great. And so we end up with a tool here that, by the way, if we look at this guy, which is, by the way, a little awkward as a pen because you got this big heavy flashlight thing sitting off the top, the balance is all wrong. If you combine all of that with the fact that, okay, look, we're at 1.15 ounces here, and I'm going the extreme backpacking version here, but we're at 0.5 ounces, and where is that night core? We're at 1.52 for a good flashlight and a good pen. I'm just not feeling it. So ultimately, I guess the reason I'm making this video is just to highlight that so very often, multi-tools can be a great thing. They can be a really good can be a really good product for very specific niches, basically. And they can give you many different functionalities in one tool, which is great. But when you get these little guys right here, when you get your pen/lights, when you get your knife/pens, you end up with something that is, generally speaking, the worst of both worlds, or at least not as good as both, and where you could pretty readily replace this tool with two things that are just going to be better for it at about the same weight, at about the same money, and it just doesn't make any sense. So everybody asks me all the time, Nick, you should review this combination, blah, blah, and very, very often it's exactly this reason that I don't. So anyways, you're not going to be seeing a review on this guy because, frankly, I've said pretty much all I need to say about it already. And I hope that this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.